this looks like a big variety of items here. What am I looking at?
And Chris is here. He's one of our leading experts. It's a table that we tried to lay out certain kinds of things that might be of interest based upon some of the questions that you were asking, right? And so it's and the sort of one of the things we did at this table. There's so many more firearms we could talk about. Is we tried to put things in pairs. So if you look at them together, and one of them is sort of the more conventional firearm, which is sometimes they're under the National Firearms Act, right? And the other one is sort of what I would call the attempt to get around it that ATF has been dealing with through rulemaking and through enforcement.
Okay.
So Chris, I don't know if you want to walk us through.
Correct. So as the director explained, we have at the top here we have an AK variant. This is a full auto assault weapon, shoulder fired, that is covered under the purviews of the National Firearms Act.
How many rounds does it fire?
Well, this has a 30-round magazine with it. This is a 75-round drum magazine. Wow. So it's magazine fed, but you can acquire drum magazines as well.
So this one, everybody would agree, right? Covered under the National Firearms Act. Fully automatic weapon. Government can have it. Military can have it. It's an antique. Some people, if they had it before, depending on 1986, they can have it, but otherwise, no. This one, which looks and operates just like it, this is a bump stock attached.
So this is a AK-47 variant that is you can acquire under the GCA, and what they have done is they have attached a bump stock to that.
How can you tell that? Sorry, where's the bump stock? Is there like a physical piece?
But that's a great question, right? Of course, right? How can you tell,
Yeah.
right? These two things are the same.
They look, right.
They operate the same. Both of them can shoot right through this 75-round clip.
That's what a bump stock looks like?
Correct. This is a bump stock. I'm trying to get it to lock back into the position. So
these are not loaded.
They're not loaded. We checked them all before
Yes,
we came
okay.
in. So this is the bump stock. The shooter would place his finger here on this piece here, and then it would rock back into the fire.
And you're doing it slow. What rate of speed are we talking about? If you know, hundreds and hundreds of rounds
400 to
a minute.
500 rounds per minute is,
Right.
I believe, what they're claiming for this particular firearm.
There is no reason you would use that for hunting.
No, I do not believe you would use this for hunting. So,
this is to shoot large numbers of people at once.
Well, let me just intervene in this.
Yes.
That's what happened in Las Vegas.
Yeah. So it was after that massacre in Las Vegas that this became illegal.
It was after that massacre in Las Vegas that Attorney General of the United States in the last administration asked ATF to review its position on whether this was classified as an NFA weapon, and the experts took a very close look at it and came out with the rule that is right now before the Supreme Court.
But the Supreme Court right now is debating whether or not that can be restricted by the ATF.
Under the National Firearms Act, that's correct.
So these could, in theory, be back on the market after June?
The Supreme Court will rule how it rules, and we'll follow the law, and if they say that it can't be regulated, it'll just have to be the application of the National Firearms Act without that particular. It depends what they say, how they say it, right, of course. This is another pair, right? This relates to this notion that what's called a short-barreled rifle also falls under the National Firearms Act, right? Congress determined that weapons, so there's two things going on here. One of them is you can shoulder a weapon. It makes it easier tactically to use, to aim, to fire, right? It's a more accurate, more lethal weapon. At the same time, the smaller the weapon, the easier it is to hide. So Congress determined back in the 1930s that short-barreled rifles, which were both smaller than a certain length and were designed to be fired from the shoulders, that combination made it unusually dangerous, right? So here's two things. These look exactly alike, right? I defy, one of them, everybody would agree is a short-barreled rifle because it's sold in one piece. The other one's the exact same thing, but it's sold in two pieces. So people are claiming, no, that's a pistol brace. the two weapons are designed to be fired from the shoulder identically. They for all intents and
They look
purposes.
the same.
Right? And so we're treating them the same. That's all that that's all that rule says. We're treating these two things the same. Right? I don't know, Chris, if you want
So
to.
correct. So this is an NFA item, National Firearms Act item, requires additional tax stamp for it, background check, waiting period,
Registration.
with NFRTR, and then you have this, which is the GCA version of it, which you could walk into the store and purchase in that configuration.
Well, we didn't. People are claiming that they could do that, right? Our rule says that these two things are to be treated the same. They're put together here. They're the same weapon. They have the same functionality. They're both designed to be fired from the shoulder. They both are under the length that Congress specified. They should be treated the same. Others are saying, and we're in litigation on this, no. The one and two pieces should be under the Gun Control Act and should not be a National Firearms Act weapon, which is sort of inside way of saying you don't have to register, you don't have to do the things that Chris said.
Is it expensive?
The brace itself or the weapon, the firearm, it's about $2,000 for that item right there.
Everything altogether is
Correct.
$2,000.
Right.
And there are additional versions that are less expensive. So in that configuration with an arm brace, you could have an AR variant and put an arm brace on that, and you get it as inexpensive as $500.
I mean, these look like this here looks like something you'd see in a war zone.
So this right here is something you would hopefully only see in a war zone. This is a fully automatic weapon, right, that is made, and you can see it right here, restricted law enforcement government use only. This is a machine gun that soldiers and law enforcement officers are allowed to have, right? Same gun here, except this one isn't fully automatic. So there's nothing on here that says only law enforcement. Aha! Until this thing comes along. This one little piece of plastic turns this weapon functionally to do the things that a fully automatic weapon do, to be a fully automatic weapon. And so now, but a do-it-yourselfer can who's not in the law enforcement community, who's not in the military, can break the law by doing what I was talking about before.
And you're seeing this on the rise with what, gangs, cartels?
That's correct. So this is a 3D printed item. So these items, some of these items that we're looking at here today, these are printed with a 3D printer, $200 3D printer. Some of these can be printed out in as little as 20 minutes.
This looks like it's a piece of a toy.
It
Like a
does.
kid's toy.
And again, it's incumbent upon ATF to teach and work with our law enforcement, other agencies, and teach them how to look and find these items. This item that the director is showing you here, this is a privately made firearm. It has no serial numbers, no information on it.
So that's what I didn't even know. That's also a ghost gun. In addition
This
to
is a ghost gun.
Yeah, see, so this is a ghost gun, then you can make the ghost gun a fully automatic weapon too, on top of it. You can combine those things.
Correct. So by simply placing this 3D printed machine gun conversion device into this rifle, it brings it to this level.
So just simply put, there's no serial number on this. So if someone has shot up a group of people, you can't trace this to the person who pulled the trigger.
Yeah,
You as the federal government cannot do
That is
that.
generally correct, yes. And it gets even more interesting when you go to pistols. Same problem though. And Chris, I don't know if you want to show the pistols and the Glock switch.
So again, you have your manufactured item, your GCA item that people can go into the store and purchase legally, complete the background check, and that's this item here. So
It's a normal lawful pistol.
lawful pistol covered under GCA, background checks required. This is a privately made firearm, ghost gun. You can see here on the front where the serial number plate
Should
is.
be.
There's no serial numbers on
Yeah.
it.
It says Austria. I mean, this feels metal and heavy and significant. This doesn't feel like something that came off a 3D printer.
Correct. So this was manufactured, and then the end user can take it with about 20 minutes of time and convert it or make it into a working firearm frame.
Okay.
And then buy the additional parts to put on to create the upper, and then they also installed a Glock
Right.
switch.
So
or
that
a
one, yeah.
switch.
So this last part here, that's really important what Chris just said. So this isn't just a ghost gun. This is a ghost gun with one of these attached. This is a fully, to operate, this is a fully automatic pistol. So it will, you'll pull the trigger once, and it will keep firing until there are no more bullets. And you can put, again, a normal magazine on there. You can put a larger magazine on there. And you can shoot out that magazine, no matter how big it is, just with one pull of the trigger in fractions of a second.
So that's the frame. I can't get this one apart.
He's going to make a new gun for you.
So basically what they do is they make this part here.
This is like plastic.
So this is the plastic piece. With about 20 minutes of work, they could make it into a working firearm, and then they could buy the aftermarket parts and simply attach that on.
And to buy those parts, is there any serial number and tracing of?
Now, you don't have to,
pieces?
if you're selling firearms parts alone, right, then it's not a frame or receiver,
Parts are not regulated.
and
by
they're not
ATF.
regulated. Under the law, we're not allowed to do that.
You
right?
would like to do that?
That's up to Congress to determine. But I mean, what we did is we tried to work with the law that Congress gave us and take the receiver, the frame, this is a frame is on a pistol, receiver's on a long
Right.
gun. We take the frame and say, hey, Congress said we can regulate the frame, right? And so people that are readily convertible to being firearms like this, like you said, 20 minutes, this is like the thing that even I could do, right? So made sure that this has to have a serial number on it from now on, right? So that's what we're trying to do.
And some of the argument right now, like in California, is over frames and pieces and whether you could go further in restricting.
It's not
a
over
ghost gun.
frames, it's actually over parts, it's over what's called billets, which is just part of a receiver for this kind of gun, for an
Okay.
AR, and it's the sort of the unmachined metal part.
Okay.
So continuing on with the Glock variant is you have the Glock, you have the PMF, and then you have the same exact pistol, but which has been 3D printed. So this frame has been 3D printed.
Yeah, it feels plastic.
Smooth, and you can see the lines of the 3D printer. So again, no serial numbers, no way to identify it. If you come to a shooting scene, first thing that ATF does is we want to know the history of the gun, trace the firearm, and there's no identifying marks on that whatsoever.
So Chris, can a person 3D print the entire firearm?
We do. There are some versions of firearms that you can 3D print. We do have an example here of a 3D printed revolver.
That looks like a staple gun, but that's an actual
It is
weapon.
an actual.
Yeah. So this will do some damage, right? So again.
How long does it take to make something like that?
It depends on the printer and the capabilities of the person operating the equipment. But some of these smaller switches, they can be printed in as little as 20 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. The other thing, that you have to remember is when you have a switch. So when you have a one of these firearms that's converted to being fully automatic, right? That's not a shoulder firearm, right? That's a pistol like this. Right, I've seen these fellows, fire them at the range, and even some very experienced, there's these guns aren't made to be automatic weapons, pistols like that, right? And so there's a huge kick up. You see people who inadvertently shoot up the ceiling at a range, right? So what happens in the neighborhood when a person does that, right? What happens to the kid one block over, the lady sitting on her porch, the innocent bystander walking around? You know, this is an incredibly dangerous situation. There's a horrible video of a hero, a law enforcement officer in Houston, who's going through a door, and he's facing one of these converted devices, and unfortunately, you know, in the time it takes to say police with a warrant, right, this person murders this officer. It's just absolutely, you know, terrifying, the power and lethality of these weapons that are out there.
So who was the owner of this fancy piece of equipment here?
Well, the owner never received it, and ATF intercepted that. This is an example of we have a couple examples of some of the cartel desired firearms here on the table.
Can I pick that up?
Yes.
I'm sorry, is
It's clear.
this the Virgin Mary?
Santa Muerta, that is the patron saint of the narcotics traffickers in Mexico.
There's a patron, there's a patron saint of drug traffickers?
Yes, that is something that they do follow, some of them, yes.
I went to Catholic school, they never told me that. That is pretty. So you see this, I mean, this looks like,
We have,
this looks like, what is that,
A sickle.
a sickle?
Grim
There's an
Reaper.
owl? A skeleton, yeah, it's the Grim Reaper.
yeah, the patron
Are these
saint.
real diamonds?
I don't know that they are. We'd have to ask, but I believe so.
How does someone have that made and mailed?
There are jewelers that make, again, you know, grips and things of that nature aren't regulated by ATF, but
But the
they do
answer,
make those
yeah.
things.
The answer, one of the, you know, not to be sort of clever or flip about it, but one of the disturbing parts of the answer is not so much how somebody has it made, but where they have it made. And they unfortunately, most of the weapons that go to the cartels are made in the United States.
The Mexican government
And they-
constantly complains about
And
that.
they flow south over the border.
Right.
ATF has 9 different task forces set up on the border in 7 different cities, working along with our partners, and we are every single day out there doing very dangerous things, risking our ATF agents, you know, risking everything to interdict these weapons. Our interdictions are way up from previously, but we talked about the problems of preventing weapons in the illegal commerce, even in the United States. It is a very difficult problem here, and it's a very difficult problem in those southwest border states and some other states about weapons flowing south. And we are out there every day. ATF agents are literally risking their lives playing cat and mouse and cops and robbers with these horribly deadly people who worship death to try and slow the flow of arms to them also.
In addition to, like you see this 50 cal weapon here, which is a favorite of the cartels, and these are considered rifles, and they can be acquired by 18-year-old individuals. So pistols are 21 years old to acquire, but these larger, more desirable weapons, these 18 years old and your normal background check and state requirements, and then you could walk out the door with these.
You know, and
That seems incredible. There was debate about upping the purchase age, and that didn't result in a
didn't go
legal
anywhere.
change.
But I would say this also, you know, one of the things when I was in Las Vegas recently, I did an event with people in the firearms industry about this idea of straw purchasers. People, you know, buying guns for other people. Some of them domestically, but some of them buying guns that are going to end up with the cartels. And we depend on firearms dealers, many of whom are our first line of defense, who will pick up the phone and help us and try to interdict this. And for those who aren't doing that, I hope and expect that as Americans, we will all do that. But those who aren't, you know, if somebody comes into your store in a border state and plunks down $12,000 cash money for one of these things, so that there's no credit card trail, you know, I mean, my word, we hope that people will help us as Americans and continue to help us and not make that sale and protect our safety. And many are. We get a lot of tips from those dealers, but I'm just sort of a little bit of a commercial for those who are going to be at the counter thinking about it. Do not let this happen. Please help us to stop this. We respect you. We depend on you. Please, as firearms dealers, help us to stop this.
Are these widely sold by firearms dealers? Because who else is the customer?
Right. Well, look, it's a lawful weapon, and so people do buy it. But if you're on the border and people are paying in cash, and there's all sorts of indicia that we try to train people at the counter to understand what might be a straw purchase. If the two people come into a store, and I don't want to stereotype, but it's a man and a woman, and the man is asking all about a particular weapon and which one is better and which one is whatever, and then it comes time to buy the weapon, and he calls the other person over and says she's going to do the paperwork and buy the weapon, right? That's not, all sorts of alarm bells should be going off. If somebody goes into the store and then walks into the parking lot and you see them together in the parking, all sorts of bells and whistles should be going off, right? This is what we work with the gun store community on, trying to work together on this. And I do think, look, a lot of people need to understand there's a lot of people out there who are willing to help, right? But there's some who aren't, and these cartels and these criminals, they find the ones who are either willing to help them or maybe a little naive and not ready, and they take advantage of it.
Understood. Well, thank you for sharing all this with us. It's very educational. Thank you.